Hey guys, welcome to another episode. I'm Ombarus, and in today's episode, we're going to be starting to talk about actual video games. If you've watched the first episode I did, I was saying that this was supposed to be a channel about video games, about developing as an indie developer. For the past 10 episodes or so, I've been talking about web development, dice throwing app and stuff like that. But really, all this channel has been about since the beginning was to be able to eventually make video games. I want to make video games that I like from and put them out there for people to enjoy. And to do that, I needed some practice. I needed to get myself into gear. I've never done that by myself. Being indie is not that easy. I needed to see how I'm going to set up everything. But now I think I have a pretty good understanding of everything that I need to do. A lot of the stuff that I needed to set up that I will only need to do once, like creating accounts and stuff like that, all of this is done. I know how to create in-app purchase, I know how to do advertisements and all that, and I know how to release on mobile. It's still a work in progress. I'm not done with everything yet, and I certainly haven't finished learning about being an indie developer, but I'm ready to start a real actual game, I think. And so now on to my next project. This project I've been thinking for a long time, and I want to show you guys what I've been doing last week. There's not much programming involved yet. Once again, I'm back to square one. What I did in dice throwing app, where I was just thinking about what I wanted to do, how I was going to set up my stuff, doing some research about which engine I was going to use. Well, all this I have to start over from scratch again. So I started with thinking about what kind of engine I was thinking of using. I was hesitating, maybe Unity, maybe Unreal. I decided to go with Godot because the plan I decided to go with is to make a 2D game that's going to be fairly simple graphically. The gameplay is going to be a little bit more complicated, but the graphics should be simple, and I think Godot seems to be a very good engine for making simple 2D graphic games, maybe even a little bit easier to use than Unity for that. So I'm going to be going with that. So you're probably wondering, what is he going to make? Well, I'm a big fan of NetHack game. I don't know if you've ever seen NetHack. People refer to it as roguelike. There's different variation. There's more strategy-oriented roguelike like Dwarf Fortress, and there's very, very old classic rogue games like NetHack, or more recent one like Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup. Tome. I've played quite a few of these. I'm a really big fan. They have a few common characteristics. They usually have permadeath. They usually have randomly generated levels. Their graphics is range from ASCII to pixel art at best, usually. They usually have some kind of RPGs element. And so I'd really like to make one of those games. Of course, every game has to be a little bit unique. It has to come from you. It has to have something that's different than all the other games out there. So I'm not just going to be taking NetHack and remaking it again. Anyway, I'm less of a fantasy kind of guy and more of a science fiction kind of guy. So I've been thinking for a very long time, could I make a science fiction roguelike? Some science fiction roguelike already exist. There's a few post-apocalyptic roguelike, but I'm not talking about these kind of roguelike. I'm talking about a really, really space exploration roguelike where you pilot a ship in space. Okay, that's fine, but what does that mean? What does it needs? What's the story? What's going to be the gameplay? What kind of graphic am I going to use? All of these kind of things I had to think about. I'm building some text file, writing down some notes. I took my notepad here and I wrote like, okay, what are the systems I'm going to have to design? What are the levels going to look like? How am I going to handle branches? Um, what kind of graphics? Am I going to have a tile system? Is it going to be pixel based? Is it going to be ASCII based? Um, how am I going to do the random generation? What kind of menus do I want to implement? What are the things? I didn't even think about like what menus I'm going to put in the game. Just how am I going to design the menu? Do I have an idea of what I want them to look like? Do I want complicated menus? Do I want menus with shortcuts? Do I want them to be able to work on mobile phone, or do I want them to work on PC with a keyboard? And all these kind of stuff. And also a little bit about the gameplay, like how are you going to be moving around in space? Are they going to be like wormholes, or is it going to be like some kind of warp engine, or is it going to be one big infinite level, or is it going to be like small levels that you travel in between? What kind of items you're going to have in the game? And what do they mean, like how are they going to work in the gameplay, right? So I was thinking of having maybe a mass driver, but what's a mass driver in my game? What I was thinking to have shields, but how are they going to be used? Are they going to absorb damage, or are they going to reduce the damage? um, I want to have like gravitic energy generator or something like that. Another thing I was trying to do is looking at other roguelikes and what are the elements I like of these roguelike. Like a NetHack is a fantasy game, but I wanted to see if I could adapt some of the NetHack elements to a sci-fi theme. For example, in NetHack you can have like a bag of holding that can carry more stuff than you would normally be able to carry. Well, could we do something like that for a space game? Of course, you'll probably have some kind of limit in your cargo hold, which is going to be like the maximum number of items you can carry. This cargo hold, maybe it could have like a gravitic compactor or something that you could install on it to allow you to compress your cargo and be able to hold more stuff, which would act like a kind of bag of holding for NetHack. Also, I've been looking up a little bit what kind of science fiction theme you can find often in these kind of games or in these kind of or in movies or stuff like that. What are the aliens that you might encounter when you're visiting different worlds? Probably these are going to be inspiration for the enemies you might encounter. So, like the insectoid enemy or the hive mind enemy, or the and they're all going to serve as inspiration for like their characteristic. What kind of like the hive mind enemy? They might always come in like groups and they'll attack you and use strategies together to attack you. Maybe the insectoid is going to be incredibly resistant, but will be vulnerable to fire or something like that. I chose this game again because it's a little bit simple. It's more complicated than the dice drawing app, but it's still fairly simple. It's going to have minimal graphics, and it'll allow me to make it fairly quickly as a single man team. Another reason I chose that is because I've already made a prototype of that. I mean, I've made a lot of prototype, but most of the ideas I've had, I got excited about them and I tried to make them quickly to see if they were fun. So I have quite a few prototype, but this one is one of the few that I actually got to a point where I was quite enjoying it and I thought it was pretty nice. And that's why it's gonna help making the beginning a little bit easy, because some of the things have already been tweaked. I kind of know that the basic core loop of the game is fun, and I kind of have an idea of how I want to realize it. Of course, I can show you this. I'm going to show you on the computer what it looked like. It was very, very simple graphically. It's purely DOS based. It's only ASCII. Your character is the little at mark that you see on the computer, and you can move around with the arrows. You can warp. The S's you see are actually other ships. So if you push L, you can move a cursor and you're going to be able to highlight objects you find, and you can get a description of them. You can see what they are. And the idea is that as you upgrade your scanner, you're going to be able to get more information out of it. You can also, I believe, hit S to perform an in-depth scan, an active scan. Eventually, maybe this could trigger some enemies and make them attack you, or maybe make them find your location more easily. But then once you've scanned them, you get how many hull they have. You have more information. Maybe eventually you can see what kind of weapons they have equipped and so on. Basically, you have two things you need to watch: your hull and your energy. If you run out of either of them, it's game over. Energy will be accumulated. You're going to have a matter to energy converter that will allow you to use items and convert them into energy. Probably there's going to be like some special item that really give you a big boost of energy, kind of like food in other roguelike. But since it's kind of a science fiction theme, probably you'll also be able to recycle items you don't need into energy, so that if you're desperate, you'll be able to get some energy back from missiles or lasers that you don't use or something like that. And basically, as you travel, you're going to be traveling from solar system to solar system. And as you get deeper into the solar systems, there's going to be branches to go to dead end solar system that will have some magical, fantastic items. And of course, as you get deeper, it's going to get more difficult. You're going to meet like carriers, dreadnoughts, and more and more bigger, badder enemy ships. One of the thing I'm thinking about, but I haven't quite figured out how it's going to work, is I would like for the player to be able to switch ships. So you would start with a very small, simple ship, but for example, if you manage to disable like a space carrier from the enemy, you could board the carrier and maybe take over, and then you'd have like a much bigger ship with much bigger hull, much bigger shields and stuff like that. But I'm not quite sure how the mechanic will work. I don't want the player to be able to jump into just every ships, and I want there to be some kind of risks when you're doing that. But at the same time, if you go into a ship that's way more powerful than yours, like everything just becomes so easy. So after I got all my ideas in one place on the paper, I decided, okay, it's time to start with a prototype. I need to get an idea for what kind of structure, what kind of design I want to use, what kind of look and feel I'm going to go for. And so I started my famous to-do list. It's not a whole to-do because this project is way too big to write everything I need to do for completing the project. So I made a to-do for only what I wanted as a prototype to make sure that I have everything into place. The first thing I want is make sure that I have my data system and I can do procedural generation and place all the sprites on the map the way I want them. The next thing I want to do is make sure that I can easily swap the look of my sprites, because I going to be using debugging sprites that I found on the internet, but this will not be the final result because I don't have the license for these sprites. So I need to be able to swap them easily when the time comes that I'm going to be ready to ask some artist or make them myself and replace them in the game. And then I want to make sure I have the basic core loop of interaction working. So shooting, picking up stuff, dropping stuff, using the energy matter converter that's going to be the kind of central point of the game. And since I want to again start by making it on mobile device, I need to make sure that I can compile Godot on Android and make it run on my device. So these are the few things I want to do. We'll see, but for now, I'm gonna wish you a good, happy week and see you in my next episode, guys. Bye.